Good evening, and thank you for being here tonight with us. We're going to move back into open session, to our public portion of the meeting. And first, I just want to say, again, thanks to our good friends at GMC Texan for providing the live streaming for the meetings. Our good friend, Mr. Rocker. So we really appreciate that. And people can watch, and even at a later date, you can see it on the website, so that's great. First, we're going to stand and, Mr. Angelai, would you lead us in prayer?
I pledge allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Honor the Texas flag.
I pledge allegiance to Texas, one state, under God, one indivisible.
And just join on the silence, please. Thank you. Okay, and tonight we do not have any commendations or recognitions, even though it's our August meeting, and students are not back in session, or neither are most of our staff. Ms. Young, are there any major comments for tonight?
No actual commendations.
Oh, we do, yes, okay, before we go to public comments. So, we'll do that next. Okay.
Two of our very own were selected as Jason Learning Argonauts, joining a group of 11 Argonauts nationwide to participate in a week-long research trip off the coast of the Bahamas. Creekwood Middle School student Jake Ballard and Wood Creek Middle School teacher Heather Hughes worked alongside scientists in this experience. They were also incredibly fortunate to have the Jason Learning curriculum in our district thanks to a generous grant made possible by Chevron, which brings hands-on, real-world learning and science education to middle school classrooms. Sean,
Just a minute.
Sorry, we are here to announce that Mr. Jake Ballard has been chosen as the Humble ISD Jason Argonaut.
The only teacher on the last day that was selected. She is the one and only representative.
Extremely excited about getting the opportunity to go and see it because I've always had a passion for wildlife and just trying to understand them. And this really, once I saw it, it really interested my attention to actually be able to help them and see what's really going on.
I feel great. I'm so excited about this opportunity and what I can share with my kids.
So Jason Learning, what they do is their mission is to create real world science connections with kids. And so what they do is they have researchers that come in and make videos or even talk with kids about what they're doing in the field and how it's relevant to the world and learning science.
I was more expecting like a real businessy type thing and not actually a lot going out into the real world and actually doing that kind of stuff. I was expecting more like, how the science is doing it for you. You just were a part of it, they kind of put you up to the next person. But when I actually got there, it was actually completely different. They actually involved you in every single thing that was, that they did, and you were actually a part of what was really going on.
One of my favorite things on the CEO campus was what they call their aquaponics lab. So what it is a mix of aquaculture and hydroponics.
It was such an amazing experience from the small thing to the big things, and actually going out and snorkeling or to what we call sea turtles. And the amazing thing about that, because it not only was it real science, but I've never caught sea turtles. And to be able to spend a couple of moments with this amazing animal was actually really like fascinating. It really made me think, these things that we're getting rid of, which is using its beauty for making us more mix, it really makes me feel bad because this beautiful animal is being destroyed, really. And to be able to help that, build that, and know that you're actually doing something about it was perfect.
Seeing the heart of the people in UCPI and the island schools is kind of a joint thing. Seeing the heart that they have for the environment and for generations that are to come is inspiring.
She was a day-to-day teacher, and I was a day-to-day student. There was nothing quite, amazing about either of our lives, except the one thing we had in common, which made us different, was our love for the earth, and our eagerness to explore it and actually learn. And that made us bond extremely well.
We weren't allowed to pick up all the stuff so that we could disturb stuff, and that was really fun for Jake. We just taking everything and everything. But the things that we could pick up, small crabs and like little feather crabs and hermit crabs and stuff like that. I can really have to say, no, I want to put this back exactly where I found it out. I don't want to disturb it at all. So I can't think of a better tip that they could have been from ISD.
Ms. Hughes is unable to be with us tonight, but we want to recognize Jake Ballard, who is the 8th grade student from Creekwood, and he will be a freshman at Kingwood High School this year. Jake here with his teacher from Creekwood Middle School, Mr. Greg Inslee. Parents Carrie and Harold Say, and Mr. Kelly Ballard. We're proud of Jake, and we want to thank sponsors like Chevron who make all of these possible for all of our students, and special thanks.
Thank you, Dr. Price. Michelle, just to be sure that there are no patron comments.
No, there's no comments.
Thank you. Okay, so then we will move to, I know we'll have some comments, as we move to comments by the board. And we always send some comments. So let's start with Ms. Mary Logan, on my far right.
Hello, nice to see everybody. First, want to welcome you back, Mr. President. Had a little surgery, and you look better than ever. So it's good to have you back.
It wasn't cosmetic.
Well, that was in the original statements I was going to make. I couldn't even see the scar line on your face, but I cut those, so I wouldn't see it. And happy birthday to Mr. Sid. Turned 50 years old yesterday. Happy birthday to you, sir. You look wonderful. Another day we're 49. So that's right. And I want to welcome my family. My family is here. My wife worked on the School Health Advisory Council, and we're going to hear a report a little bit later from Ms. Wagner. So nice to have my wife Lena and my daughters, Emma and Sydney. They're trying to hide back there. They are the pride of the Creekwood Colt volleyball team, 8th grade and 7th grade. Last year, Emma and her teammates took district in 7th grade, so we're expecting that same effort in 8th grade. And Sydney will be on the 7th grade volleyball team. So we're excited to have you here.
You are the day for this.
I know. But I will say, Sydney was in a Kingwood Park or Kingwood High School camp that you went to?
You should know that, Dad.
I think it was Kingwood Park. My wife paid for it. Kingwood High School. Kingwood High School, one of those Kingwood schools. And you know, Mr. President, I don't know if you know volleyball, but you play up to 25. And so Sydney started serving at 0-0 and ended serving at 25-0. So, yeah, so we are in negotiations with Kingwood Park and Kingwood High School for her services. I can be bought. Her mother cannot be bought, but I can be bought. So, but it's good to have you guys here tonight. So that's all I have.
Thank you, sir. Ms. Conrad? And I just want to say, thank the good Lord that you were able to get your way in between two hurricanes to get back to us.
Yes, I just want to welcome everyone back from their vacation. Hopefully you didn't encounter a double threat on your Hawaiian vacation, like I did. Once in a 22-year span that happened. So hey, lucky me. Congratulations on the last season of Argonauts. I didn't know we had Argonauts, so that's pretty cool. I know that was a great trip and good experience for you. Hopefully you'll be able to share some of the great things that you learned about them. Probably already have with Mr. Kingsley. So that's a great experience, so congratulations, and we're glad to have that program as part of ISD. I did want to thank Text and Live. I neglected to do that last time for providing the streaming services, so thanks again for the work that you're doing in coordination with our public information department, so thank you for providing our statistics so we know how that's going and what the interest is there. I did want to just take this time to remind everybody we do have our vision statement displayed on the screen, but our mission, our purpose in partnership with families and community is to develop each child intellectually, artistically, emotionally, physically, and socially, so that all students are lifelong learners, complex thinkers, responsible, moral citizens, and effective communicators. That's a pretty lofty mission, isn't it? As we go about our work for the 2014-15 school year, I just want us to be mindful of that, and whether we're drafting a policy or updating a handbook or changing a student's schedule or grading papers or communicating with parents, we want to make sure that all of our work is about creating the right conditions for our students to grow and for us to achieve that mission. That's all I have.
Thank you, Ms. Conrad. Mr. Rushing?
No comments this evening.
Sir? Mr. Cunningham?
No comments, Mr. President.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Lopez?
Just want to tell everybody that this is the, I guess my son would say this is the worst time of the year. It's miserably hot, and school's right around the corner. But as a board member, we're all excited that school's about to start up again, and it's going to be exciting in just a couple of weeks to have the kids back in school, and I know everybody's ready to go, just like I am. So hopefully we'll have a great school year, and we're all looking forward to it. Thanks.
Thank you, sir. Mr. Sidney?
Well, I was going to say no comment because several other people did too, but that wouldn't be in my nature. I'll be brief, and that wouldn't be in my nature either. But Emma and Sydney, my kids love y'all to death because y'all show up here and get embarrassed by your dad. So that gives them an excuse to never show up to a school board meeting. So they appreciate y'all taking one for the team. Jake, how was the trip? That looked like it was awesome. I saw a couple of dragonfish on the video there, and just so happened I was watching. I'm a big shark buff, and I was watching Shark Week, and
a little tidbit for all of you, so you can walk away here saying that you learned something and that I actually added value. The dragonfish is the most productive fish in the ocean, as scientists predict.
Are you maybe the lionfish?
Is it a lionfish?
The most productive board member in the ocean.
But it was on Shark Week last night, so. I got it wrong one, but I did send a picture. So that's why I read books with pictures. Because I can recognize a picture, I just don't get the names right. So, but I'm glad you were able to make that trip to represent on the ISD. That's all I had.
Are you sure? Thank you, Mr. Susan.
You're welcome.
I appreciate it. I'll keep it brief. I just also want to, I didn't do it to start with me, I just wanted to welcome Mr. Funderburk, who is here from the City Council of Humboldt. Thank you for being here. Appreciate that. He's one of our very often participants here. We appreciate that. And also just wanted to say, and I know we all saw this, to thank our PTA council that they were awarded the achievement at the gold level for outstanding PTA councils across the state. It's great, and this is for 2013-14. And all you guys know what a great job that all of our PTAs and PTOs do, and the council kind of steering that whole thing. So hats off to them, great job. And Ms. Conrad, obviously you said you didn't know about the JC program, so I guess you haven't had a chance to read your school's board article yet. Well, the article, well, it was mentioned in that article. That was, okay, anyway. But anyway, she's been in Hawaii. That's true. Okay. Well, thank you again, and we will move on now with the continuation of our agenda. And Ms. Conrad, I asked, would you please give us I'm sorry. Yes, thank you. I'm sorry. We did. And obviously, Dr. Sconzo is not sitting this evening. Dr. Price is. Dr. Sconzo was called away last minute. And Dr. Price, I'm sorry. I apologize for not turning to you. I asked everybody else for comments. Please go ahead.
I have no comments.
Well, thank you, Ms. Young. And I was on a roll too. I was kind of like hitting it up. All right, anyway, we'll go to it's all about those dragonfish, yes. And thank you for pointing that out, Jake. See, that makes us so proud. We got students there, and they speak up and let us know.
Mr. President,
Yes.
as to the proposed settlement agreement in the matter of Armstrong versus Humboldt Independent School District, PA docket 080R20810, I move that in accordance with board policy BAA legal, board enter into a settlement agreement in the matter of P. Armstrong versus Humboldt ISD, PA docket.
Thank you.
Further authorize the superintendent to execute the settlement agreement.
May I have a second?
Second.
Swing on. Okay, any discussion? Seeing none. All those in favor?
Mr. President, as to the personnel, I move that the board approve the administration's personnel recommendations as presented with addendum.
Okay, we have moved and seconded. Any discussion? All those in favor? Abstention. Yes, right. Understand. Yes. Okay. Ms. Conrad, would you please provide a motion on the minutes?
Mr. President, as to the minutes, I move that the board approve the minutes for the regular board meeting held on July 1st, 2014.
Second.
Motion and a second. Any discussion on the minutes? All those in favor? Abstentions? Okay. Next on our agenda is an update on board associations and committees. And I will start with the audit committee. Mr. Cunningham, any report?
Thank you, Mr. President. We don't have a report for today, but I will report that we will be meeting on September 9th, the audit committee our safety school audits, which are coming up for the first week. 42 campuses will be done. So, that's really what I have.
Thank you, sir. Mr. President, Board and Superintendent evaluation.
Next week is board superintendent evaluation process of goals and we'll be celebrating together quite a bit, as you guys know. And that's all I have.
You just
I'm done.
You done?
Yep.
We are just going, I'm sorry, to take a 5-minute recess. Session, and we will be back. 5 minutes. We finished with Mr. Pez. I'm going to go back to Ms. Randolph, building plan.
Building and planning, we had a great meeting last Thursday. Thank you, Dr. Bratton, for your efforts. Well up to snuff, and we had a good meeting. Mainly discussed the land purchase, which I think you've all received from Dr. Stonzo, and lots and lots of summer projects, over 200 different projects. As I think I recall, not one of them is going to be delayed, well, people delayed, but nothing major. Yeah. So that was the main couple things we talked about, Mr. President.
Thank you, sir. Finance Committee, we have no report for this evening. Legislative, and I'm also going to say legislative advertising. So, for us.
Legislative Committee, we have our first board committee meeting August the 26th, which is a Tuesday. The goal of that meeting is to plan for the first district-wide legislative committee. Those of you that about this time 2 years ago in this room, I know some of you participated in that. So be on the lookout for invitations. I'd like to involve the community in this process as we head into the 2015 legislative session. If anyone's interested and want to make sure you're on that invite list, you can see myself or Peggy at the end of this meeting. Make sure we have your contact info. As far as advertising and marketing committee, we have a meeting this evening. So hopefully this will get done soon. So we're not here all night. But to review some initial data that we requested as a committee in terms of the first meeting for this year.
Next is Mr. Sid, program evaluation.
Well, as you all know, we have a workshop on Thursday night to discuss all the things that we've been working on for the last year. Dr. Price and Ms. Atwood have put together a good program with some of the auditors that have been working with us. And we'll be looking at some of the program 3-year plans as well. So there'll be a lot of information in a short period of time and a lot of things for y'all to take home and kind of read, internalize, and make notes, write down any questions that you want us to pursue after that workshop.
Thank you, sir. Next, Ms. Conrad, technology data governance.
Not really much to report. We did meet previously last week, week before that. Just got an update on some of the summer projects from Technology Services. Mr. Alley report on their progress, and we'll be meeting again on September 2nd. I'll be more to share with you.
Thank you. Mr. President, anything on education relations?
Not yet. We have some meetings coming up.
Okay, thank you. All right, takes us through that section of our agenda. Sorry. And now we're going to move to the consent agenda. Ms. Conrad, would you please track along with me so we can get this right? Thank you. Yes. Okay. First, under learning considerations and purchases, interlocal contract for consultant services. Consent. Library books and publications. Consent. The JJAEP Memorandum of Understanding on Governance Considerations, item A. Consent. B, interlocal agreement with Crawley ISD for DAEP services. Consent. Item C, naming of the Tosceda High School softball field.
Pull that.
Okay, that's individual. Item D, resolution to suspend portions of policy EIE, local. That's consent. Number E, proposed revisions to policy EHBB, local. It's also consent. Item F, CASB policy update 99. That's consent. Item G, proposed revisions to policies CE local, CH local, and CV local. It's also consent. Okay, under financial services, considerations and purchases, item A, tax refunds. Consent. Waiver of principal and interest. That's consent. Item C, removal of tax accounts from delinquent tax roll. That's consent. Item D, resale properties. That's consent. Item E, budgetary amendments. That's a pull, or individual. And the next, and the next section, support services, considerations, and purchases. We have one item, A, generator maintenance and repair services. That is also consent. Okay, Ms. Conrad, if you would please read those back to us in a motion.
Mr. President, I move that the board approve the following items by consent. Under learning, items A and B. Under governance, items A, B, D, E, F, and G. Under finance services, items A, B, C, and D. And under support services, item A.
Okay. Mr. Rushing, second. All those in favor? 7 years. All right. Well, thank you very much. Okay. Normally, we would continue and go back to our agenda, but I'm going to ask the indulgence of my colleagues if they wouldn't mind us going out of order on one item, and that is a report under Section 3. Governance reports and considerations, I believe. No, I'm sorry, under F. Okay, and the only reason I ask that is Mr. Roseman's here from Purdue Brandon. He's going to give us a report on the delinquent tax report, and I just thought, as deference to his time, we would let him kind of go ahead of the other reports we have and some of the items we'll be voting on as individuals. So, Mr. Roseman, you have the floor.
My name is Jenny Simple. I am the district's tax assessor collector. And every year on July 1st, the district turns over all their delinquent property tax accounts to our delinquent tax attorneys, which is the firm of Purdue, Brandon, Fielder, Collins, and Watts. And tonight we have two of their attorneys that we work very closely with, Mr. Donnie Roseman and Mr. Ray East, are here to present their annual tax collection report.
Good evening.
Good evening.
Mr. President, members of the board, Dr. Price, patrons, and supporters of the district. For those of us at Purdue, Brandon, Fielder, Collins, and Mott, we are pleased to be here at the end of one delinquent tax collection year and at the start of another to give you what is becoming an annual report. We really value our relationship with the district and the partnership we've created, and wanted to express that. I'm going to hit a couple of high points, and then Greg is going to give you a lot more detail. I'll give you some observations. You have, and I don't know how to work any of this technology, but in our report on page 2,
My tip reads machines, it goes south.
There it is. This pie chart is indicative of what we are given on July 1 to collect for your district current levy. So basically, out of $171 million that you levy with the 2013 tax, we are given $2.5 million to collect, which is 1.48%. The significance of that is 7 or 8 years ago, and there's another slide that I will show you in a minute, that number was over $4 million. When your levy was $120 million. So as your levy has gone up, your taxpayers have continued to pay and improve the percentage of payment before it's turned over to us. That's great for the district. Not so great for us, but we're happy to be here. Greg, if you want to skip ahead to page 6.
It's very indicative of a great job that the Central Group do for us day in and day out. Just tremendous.
It is tremendous, and it's reflective of the partnership that we have with the tax office. Part of the reason I think your collections are better, besides the change in the economy, is that the taxpayers in Humble ISD know that the board is serious about collecting their global taxes, that everyone should share their burden to the extent that they're required to, and that if you're going to have to pay your taxes, it's cheaper to pay it before they're turned over to us than to wait for the lawyers to get involved. So your public has become educated if they weren't before. This chart basically shows the collection percentages going back to 2008 on July 1. So this year, the tax office had collected 98.52. In 2008, the number was 96.7. It just reinforces the numbers I was talking about. And then the next chart, Greg, if you would. This is basically the amounts that are turned over to us. Starting in 2008, there was over $4 million. And so that trend is there. When we got hired by the district, we joked that our goal was to work ourselves out of a job. I didn't mean it. But this trend doesn't look good for us. It's great for the district. We do appreciate our relationship once again. And I'm going to let Greg take you through the rest of the report. Thank you very much.
Page 3, this is the current tax year 2013 that were just turned over to us. As part of our work, we code accounts to organize ourselves and keep the staff working on the right accounts. So the biggest section are just accounts that have no code on them. That's just a normal account that the staff is trying to collect. And there's about 6% that we have as bad addresses. We periodically go through until we find a new address. We'll check the title, see if ownership has changed, that kind of thing. And there's 7% in litigation already. Another 7% in partial payment agreements. And you have about 10% under over 65 in disability deferrals. If you have a deferral, the taxes are due, but the district can't foreclose its lien, and we just don't try to collect it, we don't work on it. And the taxpayer can keep the deferral as long as the property is their homestead, and then when it's not, they'll have to end up paying. But we don't work on their send letters or do anything to collect it. This is status goes for all tax years, so 13 and everything prior. The biggest section is still collection pending, because that includes all the 2013 taxes. And see, there's a much bigger group of litigation with all our current pending lawsuits. And the bigger chunk in bad addresses. There's a lot of accounts that we don't sue on because we identify them as properties that probably be struck off to the district and we would not be able to resell. We try to avoid suing anything we don't think we're going to be able to selling, unless we have a buyer come to us and say, it's next door, I would buy it, but we don't mind suing on it. But we try to avoid something that's going to be struck off to us and stay struck off indefinitely. nothing too unusual. This is the amount in base tax for all years. Of course, the big section is 2013 and then 2012. And just over time, we keep working on the old years. The first couple of months, we concentrate on working on the 2013 taxes since there's only 1 year due, and we figure it's usually easier to collect 1 year and work on the $2,000 problem instead of waiting 2 years and the taxpayer has a $4,500 problem. But we don't stop after a couple of months. We'll start running reports for all years and see where we're at. And since we send a mass mailing, people are calling in for every account anyway, so we end up working on them through phone calls, and then we'll start making outgoing calls on the over years starting in the next 2 weeks. This shows how much was collected of each current tax year in the first year we worked on it. The most recent year is 2012 on the right. And usually we want to be around 70%. So and now after, as of July, we're at like 69.8, something else checking. But so around 70% is where you want to be. And once in a while, if we have bad, if something happens and there's a big bankruptcy or something like that, and it's going to be less. We haven't had that kind of problem here, fortunately. And this just shows the progress over time for different tax years. That's the 28 taxes. Usually we get to around 90%. That's pretty much where you stay. There's always accounts that we're not going to work on because we think it's probably time to sell and different things like that. Or probably identify it's underwater, that kind of thing. So around 90%, that's where that will be. That's 2009, it's almost 88% after 4 years. 2010 at 85. 2011, almost 80, and then 2012 that we just finished the first 12 months of collection. And that is the report.
Well, thank you very much. Colleagues, questions?
All right.
No questions.
Mr. Rosen,
Just
before
thank you for all you do every year. You're always there for us, there for our education foundation. So, thank you.
We really do. Thank you, Brent. That's why, before you stepped away, I wanted to make sure you do a great job for us as a vendor, and we appreciate all of that great work you do, but also as a partner, we do appreciate your support too.
We're glad we're able to do it. Thank you.
Thanks for being here.
Appreciate it.
Okay. Now we're going to get back into order. We're going to move back to Section 1, Learning Reports, Considerations, and Purchases. And while there's no action on it, we do have some reports. And Ms. Atwood, could you please lead us off with the State Accountability System for 2014?
Most of the information that would normally be presented in this report in past years would come out at once. We've been getting different pieces of this since June as the state would release small portions of it. And really what this is about what is the most recent thing. And it really comes down to what the state released as of Friday, August the 8th. What is different this year than previous years is that there are two systems of accountability that have been used to evaluate campuses and districts this year. One is what we call the state-defined system. It's the index system that you're used to getting the reports on. It's heavily weighted on the state assessments. It's either rated as net improvement or improvement required. And then there's this year what is called what we're calling the locally defined system. This is the system that was about community and student engagement. It was enacted as part of House Bill 5, passed in June of 2013. And what that bill does say is that we must evaluate in 9 areas every campus in the district. There are no criteria prescribed by the state. It is left for the districts to determine the criteria for each of those 9 areas and to work with the community to reflect what the community values in those areas. So, let's look at the state system, the state-defined system. And you may recall this time last year you saw a similar graphic as this that had the different indices. Index 1 on student achievement, which essentially is about students passing. Index 2 about student progress, about growth year over year. Index 3 about closing performance gaps. And remember, this is not about gaps between students, but gaps towards the standard. And 4 on post-secondary readiness, those things that might be indicators of students being prepared to pursue other interests after high school. I know it's very difficult probably to see, but there are some areas that are shaded in pink on here. And these pink areas indicate areas that are new to the system that were added in this year. Most significantly, what's really happened is every form of test that is given by the state to every student across the district in every language at every level is included in some way in this system. Previously, English language learners were excluded in the first year. They are included in every one of these indices this year. As well as there's a difference in Index 3 as far as the final level 3 performance being double weighted, and then post-secondary readiness indicators. High schools in the districts were evaluated in 4 areas, while elementary and middle schools were evaluated in 1. So when you look at this, you can say, well, what are the cut scores, if you will? What did you have to make? From a district's perspective, the target for Index 1 was 55, and from the district's perspective, the target for Index 4 was 56. The second and third index were ranked as the 5th percentile. You had to be above the 5th percentile. It's very similar for elementary, middle schools, and high schools in that when you think about those percentile rankings in particular, it's all districts were ranked, and then it's the 5th percentile for districts. All elementary schools were ranked, and it's the 5th percentile for elementary. Likewise for middle schools, and likewise for high schools. The differences are that there are different cut scores for each one of them. High schools, please remember, this year were not evaluated on Index 2 because there were significant changes in the testing system, namely the revamping completely of their English 1 and English 2 systems, so they could not do the measuring growth. So we've got a lot of differences from year to year, and some indices apply 1 year, but not the other year to levels. So if we look at how do we measure up as a district, Humboldt Independent School District exceeded each one of the standards as determined as the threshold for meeting expectations and to be rated as met standard. Indeed, all of our campuses also exceeded the individual thresholds that they have for each index and have been rated as met standard. The graphic here depicts how the district rated when compared to the state and the region. And as you can see, the district rated above the state and above the region for Index 1, Index 3, and Index 4. We were even with the state on Index 2. The number of values that are given down here are what the actual cuts ended up being, or the lines represent for each one of the indices for districts. And again, those were different when we look at elementary school districts. So that was the state-defined system and how we fared on that. We also had our locally defined system. And if we think about our locally defined system, these are the 9 areas that we were asked to rate every campus, as well as the district. Do that locally, and then report it to TEA in June. And then TEA will release all of the ratings as districts rated each campus and district across the state in October. So each one of those areas had to be rated as either unacceptable, acceptable, recognized, or exemplary, and then a composite rating. The only one that is different is the compliance with statutory requirement. That was a simple yes, no. You either are or you are not. So how did we go about doing this, and why did we go about doing it? It really is, we wanted to make sure that we provided an inclusive process that really looked at what does our community value in this, and what are the expectations for our students in preparing them for their future in areas not included in state assessment. So the areas that were evaluated and the way in which they were evaluated were exclusive of any state assessment. So what I can say is that there was a structure put in place that included an oversight committee, 9 subcommittees that involved over 100 representatives from across the community. It included parents, community members, teachers, administrator, office professional staff, support staff from across the district. They worked on a very aggressive timeline to actually look at each one of these indicators, define what they would mean, what areas you would use. This is just one sampling of, what the individual rubric and scorecard looked like, if you will. And what were the criteria for each one of the thresholds at unacceptable, acceptable, recognized, and exemplary. Then through a reiterative process going back between the oversight committee, subcommittees, campus administration, cabinet, also working in collaboration with other districts and other professional organizations across the state to finalize those rubrics, evaluate each campus, and then put it together to come up with an overall district rating and report it to the state by June. So what ends up happening is you have individual campuses, how they were individually rated, and then they contribute into the district rating. Okay, so at this point, all of this information has been posted to the district and campus websites so that it is publicly available. And as I said, TDA will be releasing this information across to all the, of all districts and campuses across the state in October. The group that worked on this development process is now also in the process of reevaluating each one of these indicators, each one of the thresholds, looking to see what new indicators, what should the thresholds be for this year, and communicating those with campus principals so that they know what they're being evaluated on at the very beginning of the year, not as we had to basically build the process in the same time as we're trying to evaluate them because of the time on the curriculum last year. So when we look at this, you can always say and look at both the state setting, the locally defined rating system, and what did they really tell us? So what is the outcome? The outcome is really, it gives us a snapshot, one picture of where we are as a district in each one of these areas. There are data points that inform us about our current status and provide us a perspective of the how, why, and what we do to provide the best education possible for our students and their future. They help us as we move forward in every dimension of our work to evaluate what, how, when, where, all of those things to make informed decisions. We continue to review our programs. We continue to work on the development of instructional leadership, revise and focus our curriculum so that it's consistent and aligned, as well as looking at curriculum that provides rigorous instruction and assessment that's relevant to students, because what we're preparing them for is for their future. And those really are just the data points. Any questions?
Thank you. Questions? Ms. Conrad?
Sorry, just to make sure I understand. On the committee developed the scorecards.
Yes.
With the rubrics, right? And then it has a data source and then who would collect the data. So whoever was responsible for collecting that data came back and brought it to the committee and the committee did the scoring for each campus?
It was a collaborative effort, and yes, there was this matter of, we had the committee that determined the status. The scoring went back and forth, and it was not a once and done process. So while there were pieces that campuses, and what she's referring to are these far right-hand columns as far as on this particular slide on these areas. For each of the 9 areas, once it was all gathered together, it was a matter of between the oversight committee and the campus administrator, because really it's the campus administrator whose name is associated with it, but also within their team, to go back and review and make sure. We found that some of these pieces where campuses had to evaluate themselves and provide it, some campuses were very generous and some were very harsh on themselves. And what we tried to do with working with the oversight committee and with those campuses is to make sure we had good, clear understanding and consistency across. Every attempt was made to try to provide a very consistent process across campuses so that it wasn't just, whatever you say we'll take. And campuses where they evaluated, they had to provide supporting documentation as well. The things that were pulled centrally, of course, those were the things that exist within our system. And the numbers would change.
Because I have
You may have mentioned this, I apologize. How did you, for the work community, how was the community defining this process?
We basically, we worked with, when we say the oversight committee, we identified those people in the district. First of all, districts who lead those and selecting fine arts. We look for our fine arts director to basically head that up. We look for our CTE director to kind of initiate. We solicited for them. They have sometimes, many of them have committees and groups that they work with, that they solicited input and actually members from there. We also went to the individual campuses through the campus leadership and asked for volunteers within it. If we knew we had somebody who was particularly active, whether you want to talk about a booster club or within the GT parent group, you know, the spokespeople for those types of groups, we approached them also about being members of this committee. And we even had some board members, spouses on some of these committees. Our health and wellness committee in particular, a lot of that was part of the SHAC committee, and that's got representatives of really different places. We're always looking for new members, and as we go forward this year and reviewing and evaluating it, there is a say solicitation. It sounds kind of like an inappropriate word to be using, but it is the appropriate word, through, you know, advertisement through email blast, district website, also approaching other community organizations to receive a different input overall.
So I was just going to ask, I remember Dr. Sconzo a couple months back provided, so I asked him the question in terms of the makeup of this, the overall committee. How many people were on that?
There were 100 people at least on the committee, plus some other district leadership people as well. So when you look at it, the actual subcommittees, there were 100 people.
And of that group, as I can't recall, how many were non-district people in that?
Non-district, I don't really have a number for basically non-district. Of the 100 members of it, 53% of them were parents of students within our schools.
Oh, so, okay, so, all right, that's all I wanted to know.
Yeah.
I didn't recall. Okay. I'm just curious to make sure this is really driven, it's supposed to be the community's input and their perceptions of what's going on. So they have that voice.
And as we all know, that what our community will demand or will want will change over time as well. And we'll just have to always be open to making those changes in their message so we really do reflect community and community values.
Thanks very much. Okay, and continuing along with our agenda, we have another report. One of my favorites, because we get to see her at least once a year. Come to the boardroom. Ms. Wagner is going to give us a report on, as we just mentioned, this, the School Health Advisory Council, better known as SHAC. And Dr. Price, I have a question for you in relation to this. I don't know, Ms. Wagner, if you'll hit this, but can you tell me, Dr. Price, if you'd rather wait till we go through the presentation? It had to do with one of the curriculum suggestions that came out of the committee. Go through the report first? Okay, let's do that. Let's go through it.
I think I might be able to answer that. Well, good evening, members of the board and from cabinet. I'm Helen Wagner, the facilitator of our district school health advisory council and elementary physical education and the fitness assessment coordinator for the district. I'm here this evening to give you a detailed report on the council's activities, the district wellness policy and information on some new and innovative programming concerning the health and wellness of our students, staff, and community. Last year, the district SHAC members filled out a self-assessment survey and targeted the following items as goals set to achieve this past school year. That was included in your packet, but for the audience as well, I'm going to go ahead and highlight those. Those were our goals that we set. Our first goal was to create and adopt bylaws, completed and approved. We did that. That was our first line of business, and we now have a true set of bylaws in place for our community. We wanted to form a subcommittee to review and if need be, recommend updated materials as part of our Healthy Sexuality unit. And a subcommittee was comprised of administrators, teachers, parents, and community members. We studied, reviewed, and recommended updates to teach students about goal setting, healthy relationships, refusal skills, and character building. Another goal was to form a subcommittee as per House Bill 5/1018 directive to increase physical education and fitness in the district. We basically sprung off of our SHAC committee for that House Bill 5, the scorecard committee that Carol had mentioned previously. Most of our people that were on that scorecard committee, oversight committee, they came from the SHAC, because our SHAC has to be comprised of, that's in our bylaws now, at least 50% membership must be parents of students in the district and that are not employed by the district. So we did form a subcommittee, and they helped to create the PE wellness section of the campus and district scorecard with a great emphasis on physical education, fitness assessment, mental health and counseling, and student health services. So we encompass many areas in health and wellness. Our last goal was to promote community involvement in school health issues. And this year, several health fairs were held in the district, promoting community partnerships that address health issues, as well as provide information about numerous resources in our area in Harris County. Also, for the first time, Humboldt ISD extended an invitation to Westlake Houston YMCA after-school program directors and their staff to attend a day of training with our elementary physical educators on our coordinated school health program, CATCH. And that was very successful because those folks come into our schools and they provide after-school care at every one of our campuses. So we decided it would be a great partnership with them to invite them to be part of our CATCH program and what we're teaching the students during the day to kind of extend some of those concepts into the after-school program as well.
Mr. President, can I ask a question?
Can you start?
Yeah, sure. So those after-school programs are in every elementary school, I believe.
After-school?
After-school programs.
Yes.
So did you get, what percent participation rate did you get?
I had their program directors and their site directors. They did not send one from every single school that's a site director. They have people that oversee certain areas of the district. There were 5 in attendance, and they were very appreciative of being connected with us. And that was something that was brand new this year that we brought into place. So we were pretty proud of those actions. So once again, every goal that was set by our council was met, and I consider that quite an accomplishment. Every year, our campuses complete a wellness policy, and that's as per our federal nutrition guidelines. And this year, I know that you have that in your packets. You can see that I created a different document. I put red arrows on there indicating areas of where we moved that needle up, indicating improvements, possibly where the needle dropped, to show that we needed to have some improvement in certain areas. And a black check mark was in there indicating that we stayed the same in that area. One thing that we also added as part of their rating this year is they needed to give us commentary, because we felt like they could give us that rating of exemplary or recognized, but what got you there? Please give us some feedback. And our feedback was wonderful. It gives us great direction in some of our programs to head with next year. And one area under component 2, which is physical activity education goals and guidelines, which is 1B, it says schools will encourage classroom teachers to provide short activity breaks between lessons or classes. There was quite a bit of feedback regarding that guideline and a need for more brain breaks and activity breaks throughout the school day. Now maybe you're beginning to make a connection with what I put in your hands earlier this evening. When researching this topic, this slide says it all.
Ms. Wagner?
Yes.
Mrs. Bez has a question.
I have a question. I want to kind of back up just a touch.
Okay.
The all future food and beverage contracts shall consider the nutritional value of products. You see that?
I do,
And we got rid of Chick-fil-A this last year. Okay. Then there's an initiative by a nationally known figure that's trying to feed our kids tofu and seaweed. And so my point is that kids, what they found is that kids aren't eating it when they're going to class hungry, and that's causing them not to learn because they don't want to eat that stuff. are we at least having some balance, or at least making sure the kids are willing to eat what we're throwing at them? Are we just basically saying, no, it's gotta be nutritional, we don't care if the kids starve or not? Because the primary reason why we have, we're educating these kids is so they get information to their head, not to make sure they have a good lunch. I mean, yes, we want to make sure they have a nutritional lunch that's balanced, but that doesn't mean that we can't have Chick-fil-A or something. We should have choices. So what is your response to all that?
I will tell you that I'm going to defer that one to our child nutrition directors because they are directly involved with what the guidelines are that they must follow, the federal guidelines.
So why is this part of your?
It is part of the wellness policy. And so when we splinter this out to different departments, as you can well see, it's not all physical activity. We also have our mental health services and counseling service in there. We have our student health services, which Ms. Leupold oversees that section. It is very cumbersome in its entirety, the whole document. So I don't set those standards, I don't make those standards. I do follow the direction of our child nutrition directors, and they are very well up to date with that. There will be, I know that y'all have heard about the smart snacks in schools that Shirley has been telling you about. And so more and more will be coming out, but I really don't feel too comfortable answering those questions.
I do not want to put you on the spot, so I apologize for that. It's just one of my little pet peeves. I'm starting to call it the Hunger Games, because that's what we're doing for our kids a lot of times. So look, it's not your bailiwick, and it's not your book.
And
thanks.
Part of our physical activity piece and our coordinated school health does deal with nutrition education. That's what the CATCH program, that is a piece of it. And so when we are educating the kids on the foods to eat, the go slow and whoa foods that I know if you've had children at the elementary level, they're very well aware of those terms. We do educate the kids on proper nutrition, good go foods to eat that are healthy for them, and how to prep them, how to search for them out in their grocery stores. So I can speak very well to that aspect of it, but the actual guidelines of what is allowed to be sold is not really in my arena, so.
Can I just add something to that? I'm sorry. But I'm curious because part of nutrition is just not only what we consume, but how we consume it. And our research indicates that it's more healthy for us to eat more frequent meals throughout the day. So how are we addressing those types of things in our day-to-day activities at school? Because we have athletes who have classes throughout the day. They should be replenishing those nutrients to their bodies, not waiting until 1 o'clock lunch and things like that. It seems to be kind of inconsistent from campus to campus, what's allowed there in terms of maybe snacking or something like that.
Okay,
What kind of feedback have you gotten?
I think I can add a little bit to that. At our elementary level, we have a morning snack. It's called our catch break. And that is instituted. Now, what time of the day is up to each campus and when they encourage that. But that is to kind of give them that boost, that brain boost that they need mid-morning when they start to run out of energy and nutrient and fuel for the body. So I know that we are instituting that. That is working across the district very successfully. The classroom teachers are very helpful in that and sending lists home at the beginning of the school year, what types of good snacks are encouraged to bring to, not hot Cheetos, things like that. We give them a nice list, and the teachers have worked on it. So that's part of our coordinated school health program. I can speak to that with the elementary level. As far as middle schools and high schools, I know Troy might be able to answer that a little more directly. I know kids are hydrated and encouraged to hydrate throughout the day. I have had a child that's gone through the athletic program as well, as you say. They are definitely making sure those kids stay hydrated throughout the day so that when they get to practice, they're not in a dehydrated state before they start.
I would agree that they're getting that during that time period. It's when they return to class and not allowed to have a snack or something like that.
Ms. Carr, let me ask, because at elementary, you see it all the time when you visit the campuses, the kids are having snacks, whether it's morning or afternoon, and that seems to work pretty well for real guys. Dr. Price, could you make a note of that in terms of Ms. Conrad's question about, do we have any set policies at the middle school and high school levels where the students, obviously different ages, and types of environments as far as what their nutritional needs might be. Unlike an elementary classroom where it's really easy because for the most part they have them all there. It's easy to get to. So if you could make a note on that one, we can look into that.
Absolutely. So back to my brain. So when I started researching this topic, as a slide up here, you can see it pretty much, it says it all. We talked about the nutritional aspects just now, but movement is vital. You can see that this is an average composite of 20 students' brains taking the same test after either sitting quietly, and that's the brain on the left-hand side, or a 20-minute walk. You can see how the brain lights up. The neurons are firing. Learning is much more conducive after a brief walk. You can clearly see that when a human sits for longer than about 20 minutes, the physiology of the brain and body changes. Gravity begins to pull blood into the hamstrings, robbing the brain of needed oxygen and glucose or brain fuel. The brain essentially falls asleep when we sit for too long. Moving and being active stimulate the neurons that fire the brain. So as part of our summer staff development, we will be encouraging spurts of movement throughout our students' day. So as a reminder of this initiative, I've given each of you a brain stress ball to take back to your places of work or home, and let it be a symbol and a reminder to you that if you have been sitting for long periods of time, to get up and move. As a follow-up from last year, our elementary physical education teachers implemented using Eduphoria for lesson planning and sharing best practices. I know Ms. Conrad, you had asked us about that last year, and we put that clearly into place this year. So lesson planning is happening, and we're sharing those best practices across the district. Also, for the first time, our physical educators, coaches, and adaptive PE teachers, this was quite an undertaking. K through 12, we shared a day of learning to support the district goal of writing across the curriculum. By the end of this session, an action plan from each vertical team was developed and will be implemented this school year. So it was the first time that we had an opportunity for all of the PE teachers and coaches to actually meet and work together on a specific initiative. Our district will be upgrading to Fitness Gram 10, which is a web-based version that was funded by the 83rd Texas Legislature, and all students in grades 3 through 12 that are receiving physical education credit will be assessed annually. In closing, I want to give an accommodation to many of our schools that participated in this year's Jump Rope for Heart or Hoops for Heart. They raised $90,888 district-wide. That's quite a feat. And our district also raised $29,450 as part of the American Heart Association Heart Walk this year as well. So I believe it's very evident that many of us are working hard in promoting healthy lifestyles for our students, staff, families, and community in our ISD. And thank you all, and to all of the SHAC members that are here this evening for their continuing efforts in striving to make healthy the norm in our district.
Any other questions?
Any other questions?
Yes.
Yes.
Just given what I do every day, I continue to have a vested interest in what your kids are doing and accomplishing and moving forward. I put you on the spot last time, I was going to give it this year. Do you ultimately feel supported with your initiatives by this district? Is there anything as a board we need to do further to ensure that you are?
I do feel good support. I feel as though this committee has grown in the last 4 years. It is extremely representative of all facets and areas of our district. It's a great group of people that are working together to recommend good changes and things for our students. So yes, I do feel supported. I know that every time I do come and face this board annually, it is one of my most enjoyable evenings as well, because I am able to stand up. I'm not taking credit, but I am surely here to tell you about the hard work and efforts of these people that give of their time and energy and effort. So I thank you.
Would this be an appropriate time for Dr. Price to address your question?
Yeah, I was going to get to that right now. And The question I had for Ms. Wagner, the question I have for Dr. Price is, I understand, and I've received phone calls, I'm sure other board members have too, the SHAC committee has worked very hard and long on the new sex ed curriculum, and they had presented it, and I believe, if I remember the facts right, at the end of the year, I think it was the April timeframe, and I'm just having trouble understanding why we haven't moved forward with that after all of their efforts, and they were comfortable with it. And one thing I had heard as a reason was, well, it was the same as some other district had put something in place and they had to pull it back. But I understand that's not the case. So I just wanted to ask from your vantage point, why are we not there? If that's what these folks are charged with, and we're not using their recommendations, or why aren't? I guess that's the question.
And I'll take responsibility. You asked me to put in a consistent implementation of curriculum and development, and this is a little bit different than what we've done with, whether it's math, ELA. What we've done is we've taken our past curriculum, we've worked with practitioners, we'll provide it, develop it. We haven't bought prepackaged. This is prepackaged. And what we've done in the past is we've let people who are actually teaching it look at it, develop it, make some recommendations. I respect everything the SHAC committee has done. They've done a lot of work with it, but I want to, especially with something this sensitive, I want to make sure the rollout is there. I want to make sure that the people who are actually teaching it understand what we're doing, why we're doing it, and I want them to be involved in the adoption and writing of this. I'm not saying that we aren't going to do it. I want to slow it down and we make sure that we roll it out in the proper way, where we don't have hiccups. Like I said, it's something especially sensitive to people who from community or from household to household have a different feeling about sexual abuse.
I appreciate those comments. I guess I'd like to follow up on that. Do you have any kind of projection as to where we might be looking for the second semester this year? Will it be not till the next school year? And not completely on the spot on time, I'm just curious if we've got that sort of laid out milestone.
No, I think that's something that Helen and I will start working on. I do know with, right now, the priority of the curriculum is our ELA on that. I know that we can put some people together and start working on it. We talked about this earlier, do the second half of the semester. We can come back and give you a report on our progress, but we want to make sure it's consistent.
I appreciate that. And just one last thing. Go ahead.
We have school personnel on this committee, and so I would assume it's the people that are involved with maybe with teaching this type of subject matter. Is that the case or not the case? Because I would think that the inputs that they have based on what's coming into the committee. So I still struggle with that.
I think it's just going back to having a consistent policy.
Let me just ask, are there any either community or staff members who serve on the SHAC committee? If I could just ask them just to stand up for a moment so we can thank them. Thank you very much.
A lot of groundwork has been laid. I can assure you as far as our process goes. So I do think that when we sit down and start working on this, we have a lot laid in place already. I feel very comfortable with that.
I'm gonna need a bed to sleep in tonight, so if anybody has an extra bed, my couch is a little small, you know, I see my wife's side of the troubles. Thank you for your work. You did a lot.
Thank you all.
Check.
Thanks. Okay. We're going to now continue with the rest of the agenda and finish up through here. I'm sorry, guys. I know you have a meeting right behind us. We're going to try to get through this pretty quickly. Okay. Under number 2, governance reports and considerations, we did have an item for individual action, and it's the consideration of naming of Tocino High School football, softball field. If I could have a motion.
Second.
Second. Discussion, Mr. Sitten?
Yes, this is one of those things that we as a board cannot take lightly. Anytime you're naming a facility, it's a permanent thing. And, you look at multiple things. You look at time and enrichment, you look at what they've done in the community, you look at how they've affected children. Because that's our end product. That's our end goal, is how they have affected children. This coach, I was going to say, I was unfortunate that I attended the funeral because it was such an early event in this young man's life. And what I experienced there in the outpouring of community support and kids, that is one of the biggest funerals I've attended, and I bet you 60% or more of the attendees were kids. Kids that he has touched their life in some form or fashion. His tenure in our school district was not long, granted, but his impact on our community and the students that we serve has been there for over 20 years. And his service to our community was in the field of softball. And as a high school coach, as a club coach, multiple high schools, multiple kids, and I felt the need just to let everyone know that I strongly support this. There may be other situations that I wouldn't be as strong in supporting the naming rights of a facility, but in a case like this and the tenure in the community, not just with our school, but in the community and the amount of student lives that he has touched, I just felt the need just to put that out there and to add some more validity to what we're about to build.
Any other comments? We have a motion and a second. All those in favor? Okay, next, under Section 3 Financial Services Reports, we have Linda Dwyer, budgetary amendments.
So moved.
Second.
The only reason I pulled this one, I would not have pulled it if I didn't hear anything. Was to thank you, Ms. Lynn, the way you had the budgetary amendments set up little notes. It's really easy to follow. And I know we requested to do that like 6 months ago. You guys have done that. I just wanted to, looking through this, it made it easy to follow what we're doing. I appreciate it. Just keep up the good work. Thank you. That's the only reason why I pulled it. Sorry.
That's right. It's a good reason to pull something.
Okay, that's it.
Any discussion? All in favor? And that takes us to the end of our agenda on action items. Compelled to ask this. Do you have any future board business, gentlemen, lady, would like to move forward or get on the docket, so to speak, for the next one?
Mr. President, I
Yes,
don't
sir.
have something forward, but I would like to ask if you would, from the Building and Planning Committee, I appreciate the information on the sale. How about something with the summer project, a list of what's going on? Is it north, south, west? Where's our activity? I'd like to get that.
I'm going to defer to Dr. Brown on that. It's everywhere. Everywhere. There's just chillers here and chillers there and roofs.
I'd just like to see a list.
Yeah.
List of that.
Can we provide that to Mr. Cunningham?
That's it.
With that, if there is nothing else, I'm going to call us adjourned. Hour and a half.
You're free.